3 years ago, at 68, I finally admitted something that terrified me more than death itself. I had become an alcoholic, and nobody around me dared to call it by its real name. It didn't start with wild parties or dramatic breakdowns like you see in movies. It began with one innocent glass of wine at dinner, something civilized, something I deserved after decades of hard work. But that single glass became two, then three, then an entire bottle disappeared every single evening. Here's what nobody talks about. Alcohol addiction among seniors is spreading like wildfire, yet it remains completely invisible. Every fifth person over 65 drinks dangerous amounts regularly, but we pretend it doesn't exist. Why doesn't anyone notice? Because older adults don't cause scenes in bars or get arrested for drunk driving. They drink alone, behind closed doors, in the safety of their own homes where nobody can judge them. This isn't the Hollywood version of alcoholism with screaming matches and broken bottles flying through the air. This is quiet desperation, masked as well-deserved relaxation after a lifetime of responsibilities and hard work. That first glass of wine seemed like medicine. It dulled the physical pain and quieted the racing thoughts. Just for sleep, I told myself. Just to take the edge off this loneliness that's eating me alive. But addiction doesn't announce itself with trumpets and warning signs. It creeps in wearing the mask of relief. Within 6 months, I couldn't imagine ending a day without alcohol flowing through my system. The grocery store clerk knew my wine preferences better than my own children knew my daily struggles. My memory began failing in ways that scared me. Entire conversations disappeared. Important appointments forgotten completely. Sleep became more elusive despite drinking more wine, creating a vicious cycle that I couldn't recognize or break. My daughter called less frequently because our conversations had become repetitive and strange, though I couldn't understand why. Family gatherings became performances where I calculated exactly how much I could drink without raising suspicions. I perfected the art of appearing sober while being anything but, a skill that terrifies me now. I casually asked him to grab a bottle of wine from the kitchen while I prepared our afternoon snack. He did it without question, this sweet child who trusted his grandfather completely and unconditionally. Later that evening, in his innocent way, he mentioned to his mother how Grandpa always has wine with snacks. The phone call came at 8:30 that night, and I knew immediately why my daughter was calling. Her voice carried a mixture of love and fear that cut through my denial like nothing else could. For 3 years, I had been living in a carefully constructed lie, and my grandson's innocence had shattered it completely. That night, alone in my living room, I counted 17 empty bottles hidden throughout my house. 17 bottles that I had somehow convinced myself were just occasional drinks for relaxation and sleep. The reflection in my bathroom mirror showed a stranger. Red-rimmed eyes, trembling hands, defeated posture. This wasn't the retirement I had dreamed about during 40 years of working overtime and saving money. After retirement, I started drinking. Not binge drinking, just 1 glass every evening. Then 2. I deserved it. For better sleep. Just a little bit. These were my daily justifications, my mantras of self-deception. And nobody around me called it by its real name. Nobody wanted to acknowledge what was happening right before their eyes. Here's the shocking truth. Every fifth person over 65 consumes alcohol in dangerous quantities. That's 20% of our senior population. But why doesn't anyone notice? Because elderly people don't cause public disturbances when they drink. They don't get into bar fights. They drink at home, quietly, in complete solitude. This doesn't look like the movie version of alcoholism we're used to seeing. No broken bottles, no screaming matches, no dramatic interventions. Just a slow, silent descent into dependency that happens behind closed doors. So why do they start? The reasons are heartbreaking and all too common in our society that discards its elders. Loneliness hits like a physical blow. Imagine spending 40 years surrounded by colleagues, meetings, deadlines, purpose. Then suddenly, silence. Empty days stretching endlessly ahead. No one needs your expertise anymore. You're invisible. Physical pain becomes a constant companion. Arthritis, back problems, chronic conditions that doctors dismiss with, "it's your age." Psychological pain cuts even deeper. Friends start dying. Your spouse of 50 years is gone. Children are busy with their own lives. Sleep becomes elusive. You lie awake at 3 a.m., mind racing with regrets, fears about the future, wondering if anyone would notice if you were gone. Then there's retirement syndrome, a real psychological condition that nobody talks about. The depression, anxiety, loss of identity. And it works. At first. That's the cruel trap. The first drink does relax you. It does help you sleep initially. But alcohol is a liar. It's the friend who seems helpful, but slowly destroys everything you care about, including yourself. The family often doesn't see it coming, or worse, they choose not to see it because it's easier to look away. Well, he's earned it. Let him relax. What harm can it do at his age? These become the family's justifications. It started so innocently. One glass of wine with dinner. Civilized, cultured, the way sophisticated people relax after a long day. I told myself I was embracing the finer things in life. I'd worked hard for decades. Didn't I deserve this small pleasure? 6 months later, it was 2 glasses, then 3. The bottle started emptying faster, but I had reasonable explanations for everything. The wine helps me sleep better. It eases my back pain. It's just 1 bottle. I'm not drinking vodka in the morning. My hands would shake slightly in the mornings until I had my first glass of the day, which I'd move to lunchtime. Sleep became worse, not better. I'd pass out easily, but wake up at 2 a.m., heart racing, drenched in sweat. I asked him to pick up wine from the store while his mother was in the pharmacy. Didn't think twice about it. He told his mother, my daughter. Not to get me in trouble, just sharing his day like kids do. When Sarah arrived at my house that evening, I knew immediately something had changed. Her eyes held a mixture of love and devastation. "Dad, we need to talk," she said. 4 words that shattered my carefully constructed world of denial and self-deception. The conversation lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of truth I'd been avoiding for years. She'd noticed things I thought I'd hidden perfectly. So what actually replaced the alcohol in my daily routine? This wasn't some magical transformation overnight. I started making elaborate tea ceremonies for myself. Sound silly? Maybe. But it gave my hands something to do. Not to check on my drinking, just to talk about her day, my day, the grandkids, absolutely anything. Those conversations became my anchor. Something to look forward to instead of that numbing escape into the bottle. Друзья, напишите в комментариях, откуда вы нас смотрите, и ставьте лайк, если хотите узнать, что же самое удивительное и неожиданное. But here's what surprised me most. I joined a support group, Anonymous Alcoholics, specifically for seniors. What a joke that thinking was. There were professors, doctors, teachers, people just like me who'd fallen into this trap. Or Frank, who'd been drinking cooking sherry because his kids removed all the real alcohol from his house. These weren't stories from some textbook. These were my neighbors, essentially. People who understood the specific shame of being 68 and dependent. I had 3 slip-ups in my first year. 3 evenings where I bought wine and drank the whole bottle. The old me would have said, "See, I'm hopeless. Might as well give up completely." But the group taught me to see it differently. 3 bad days out of 365? That's still progress. Whenever I worried about money, health, or my kids' lives, that's when the craving hit hardest. So we developed strategies. Call someone immediately when anxiety starts. Take a walk around the block, even if it's raining. Write in a journal. Not fancy therapeutic writing, just honest scribbling about what's bothering me right now. The physical changes were incredible, but they came slowly. Don't expect miracles in week 1. After about 6 months, my hands stopped shaking in the mornings. I hadn't even realized how bad it had gotten. My sleep became actual sleep. Not that alcohol-induced unconsciousness that left me exhausted every morning, but the memory improvement. That was the game changer. I started remembering conversations with my grandkids again. Real conversations, not those foggy interactions where I'd nod along but couldn't follow what they were actually saying. My grandson told me something that broke my heart and mended it simultaneously. Kids notice everything. Everything. They just don't always have words for what they're seeing. It's just gone. Most days. Some days it whispers, but it's a weak whisper now, not a roar. The biggest change isn't what I don't do, it's what I do instead. I volunteer at the local literacy center twice a week, teaching adults to read. I've also become the family historian, digitizing old photos, recording stories my kids might want someday. When you're drinking every evening, you don't think about legacy. You think about making it to tomorrow. Now I think about what I want to leave behind. What stories deserve preserving. My relationship with my children transformed completely. Not because they love me more now, but because I'm present now. Present for their problems, their successes, their ordinary Tuesday phone calls about nothing important. Last month, my daughter called me crying about work stress. In the old days, I would have listened with half attention. This time I heard her, really heard her. And I was able to offer actual support, not just alcohol-doled platitudes. That's what sobriety gave me back. The ability to be useful to people I love. This sounds nice, but I'm too old to change. This is just who I am now. I thought that exact thing at 68. Felt like my personality had crystallized around this evening drinking routine. Here's the truth nobody talks about. Your brain can still change at 70, 80, even 90. It takes longer than it would have at 30, yes, but it absolutely can happen. The first month is hell. Let's not pretend otherwise. Your body is confused. Your emotions are raw. But week by week, something shifts. You start waking up without immediately calculating how much you drank. You start making plans for evening activities because evening isn't just drinking time anymore. The pain is real. The loneliness is real. The feeling that your useful years are behind you, that's real too. But alcohol doesn't solve any of those problems. It just postpones them while creating new ones. And here's what I wish someone had told me 3 years ago. You don't have to figure this out alone. There are doctors who specialize in exactly this issue. Not judgmental doctors. Clinical, practical doctors. Call me every Tuesday at 7. Come grocery shopping with me on Saturdays. Help me find a hobby. Don't just say, be supportive. Nobody knows what that means. Give them concrete ways to help. And if you're watching this because you're worried about someone else, listen carefully. Confrontation doesn't work. Lectures don't work. Hiding the alcohol definitely doesn't work. What works is consistent, non-judgmental presence. Being available without being pushy. Offering alternatives without making the drinking the central focus of every conversation. Want to come to the farmer's market with me Saturday is better than you need to stop drinking. Most older adults who drink problematically do it because they're bored, lonely, or in pain. Address those underlying issues, and the drinking often becomes much easier to address. I'm 71 now. 3 years clean. And I'm not the same person who started drinking at 65. I'm also not the same person I was before I started drinking. I'm different. Maybe better in some ways. Going through addiction and recovery taught me things about myself I never would have learned otherwise. I learned I'm stronger than I thought. I learned I was lonelier than I wanted to admit. I learned my children love me more than I believed. And I learned how to accept help gracefully. These weren't lessons I wanted to learn through alcoholism, but they're valuable lessons nonetheless. If I could go back and prevent those 3 drinking years, would I? Honestly, I'm not sure. They were awful years, but they led me to become someone I actually like being. Someone who can be present for his family, useful in his community, and honest about his struggles. So here's my final message to anyone who needs to hear it. It's not too late. Whatever your age, whatever your situation, it's not too late to change course. You don't have to live the next 10 or 20 years the same way you lived the last 3. You deserve relationships where you're fully present instead of partially absent. And you deserve to discover what you're capable of when you're not spending your energy managing a drinking habit. The help is there. The support is there. The possibility is there. All you have to do is take the first step, which might just be admitting to yourself that what you're doing right now isn't working. That's where recovery starts, with that simple, difficult truth. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to begin again.